All right, y'all boys, we back with another video. So today we are going to be going over one of the other characters that got buffed. Now, obviously, this is way overdue. I literally should have done this about almost 2 weeks ago. But yeah, here we are. So the character that we're going to be talking about today is actually going to be one of my favorite characters in the entire game, right? Like overall, completely, entirely, his kit, everything. This is one of those characters I enjoy about him. He's very simple, but he is literally my favorite. I don't know what to say. I don't know. I love him. All right. No homo. Now, I would have to say this is probably the absolute best and most valuable buff among all the batch characters that we have gotten. JJK Zero's Geto buffs put him from like a good debuffer to one of the strongest debuffers for curse technique, and he also becomes a really good sub DPS who can dish out some really good damage. Now, they overhauled all of his skills, including his ultimate. All of them, literally all of them, now scale their damage from his cursed energy while lowering the requirements for those who did already scale from cursed energy before. Now, his skill 1 used to only increase his crit rate. Now it can go up to 65% crit rate while also increasing its damage by up to 60% scaling from his cursed energy. On top of that, if you have 60 cursed energy, he will increase his Jujutsu damage by 15%. And absolutely giga-stacked skill 1. Another skill 1 that's very relative or similar to this is going to be the green Geto. His is very similar to this one as well. So if you are familiar with that one, then you should be familiar with this one. His skill 1, yes, is indeed now more powerful than it used to be, but his skill 2 definitely is going to be one of the best parts of his buffs. His skill 2 is fucking crazy now, right? Before, it would only increase the enemy's curse technique damage received by 33% for 3 turns only if you have 40 curse energy or more. But now it will always increase the enemy's curse technique damage received by 25% while increasing its effect up to 50% scaling from his curse energy. This means at max stacks, he will be able to apply 150% debuff if you manage his curse technique, his curse energy correctly. And trust me, with Geto's passive providing him 20 cursed energy every turn, he can easily hit these max numbers easily with no effort. Of course, he also decreases the enemy's physical damage as well, but to be honest, we don't really care about it. It might clutch in a few scenarios where, you know, obviously the enemy does physical damage, but we mainly care about the curse technique damage increase, right? Because that means you're going to be able to do more damage. Next up, we're going to have his skill 3. So his skill 3 was his AoE skill damage, which was almost double his base multiplier while also increasing its damage up to 100% scaling from his curse energy. And it also has a small debuff now, increasing all enemies damage received by 10% for 3 turns, up to 30% if you have 60 curse energy. So it does a little bit more. I say a little bit more, but it does a lot of damage, I'm not going to lie, as an AoE skill. But realistically, you're not going to be using it all that often unless you're trying to wave clear something. You're still going to be mainly focusing on your skill 2 as your main means of trying to increase your team's overall damage output. And then let's talk about his ultimate, because his ultimate was probably the worst part of his entire kit, just because it should be one of the main focal points of his kit, or at least the second main focal point of his kit, or for many characters, that's usually how it is. But for him, it definitely was literally the worst part of his entire kit. So they giga buffed his ultimate. So now he rivals a duped Blue Gojo in terms of damage. Before, it had a shit multiplier of like only 300% while getting a damage boost scaling from its curse technique, which it shouldn't have functioned like that, because now what it means is you have 300 base and you have a conditional effect to do average damage, which doesn't make any sense. This is literally the dumbest shit that I ever seen a fucking dev do in my entire life. They clearly fumbled extremely hard. They just didn't use their brain whatsoever. So yes, unfortunately, his ult was completely shit before. And not only was the base multiplier absolutely embarrassing, but the max damage boost required to even have it, like, you know, you need a lot of curse energy. He would essentially grief himself by reducing his curse energy too, by using his ultimate, making him useless for the next few turns, which, keep in mind, the entirety of his kit requires cursed energy for him to actually function or utilize the actual conditional bonuses. So yes, that made him even worse, because once you ulted, then he's just a dead fish. On top of the fact that even his ult is already dead as it is. They literally made him so bad. Now his ultimate gets a good 760% damage multiplier, so that's going to be his base. So that's basically double than what he had before. And on top of that, it also gets a damage boost of 20%, but up to 200% at 60 cursed energy. On top of that, he no longer reduces his cursed energy to 0, or rather just by 60, meaning if you have over 60, which you should, because he's going to be having like a bunch of cursed energy, you're just going to have a lot of it. It's just like, yeah, there's no problems there for this character. And yeah, he's going to be able to maintain his curse energy very easily. He does a lot of damage now. He debuffs. He's literally powerful. I'd say he's probably one of the best blue characters currently in the entire game. Obviously not counting Blue Inumaki, because Blue Inumaki is an absolute menace as well, right? But anyways, without further ado, that's actually going to be the overview of the character with his newest buffs. Anyways, let's go to the teams. I'll probably only have one or maybe two teams, I don't know. But yeah, I'm not going to really go too crazy on this character, right, in terms of that. All right, so here we are with the teams. Now, I'm going to obviously have two teams. We're going to have the standard team, and then we're going to have the nuke team. So first up, as you can see here, we are going to be running the debuffing situation with, of course, Gakuganji in the back line, where then Yuki will just eventually die, and then we'll pull up the Gakuganji to do as much damage as possible. This might be subject to change, though, but this is probably going to be the overall basis of the team. I'm definitely going to have Yaga, Geto, and, of course, Gojo in the team. This is obviously going to be running Geto in his kind of like main usage, which is as a sub DPS while also being a utility debuffer. And then obviously Gojo is going to be the main carry. We do have Pride obviously on Gojo. The only reason we have Pride here is just because I didn't really have that many memories to kind of like choose from anyways to increase curse damage. So I figured, okay, we'll just slap non-standard on Geto and then we'll just go Pride on Gojo, since Gojo can definitely utilize Pride. Let me kind of show you the skill levels and the ults and everything. Okay. You're already seen that. Now let's move on to, of course, the nuking team. So the nuking team we have here is obviously going to be Domain Megami, Blue Momo, and then of course we're going to have Yaga here. This is what we have currently, and it's subject to change. Keep that in mind. It's subject to change in the actual run, so just keep an eye out for that. Obviously, I'll point it out when I'm actually doing the runs. And then those are the skill levels. So let's get right into the showcase. All right, so we're here on floor 33. There really isn't any good places to kind of showcase off the blues, especially if you're using Blue Gojo as your main DPS, which is kind of unfortunate. But obviously later on when we have Sukuna and all that, we can definitely do those longer form ones that have like multiple waves, and it'll be better to kind of showcase them off. But currently as it stands, we have to do some kind of floor that has only one wave to actually utilize Gojo to the max. And this is probably this one, the one with the baseball machine, and I believe the Mahito ones are the only ones I could do. Now, obviously, this boss also has disruption, but it's not as bad as the other bosses, right? So here we're just going to use skill 3 on Yuki until he dies, and then stall with the other skills here. And we're going to use Pride and skill 3 on Gojo immediately. Should live this easily, and then he'll tank the next hit too. So skill 1, we're not ready to attack yet. One thing you might know is you can see that on Geto I did swap out the memory that I had, which was non-standard, and I put Kamo's archery lesson on him, because that way on Gakuganji I decided to, of course, you know, he doesn't have the Kamo's archery lesson anymore. I decided for Gakuganji I would put the Junpei memory on, just because the biggest issue that I'm going to have straight off the bat is that I'm not going to have enough curse energy for my Gakuganji to get as much debuffs as possible. So that's why we swapped into that. And now we can start doing all the buffing, and now what we're going to do, use skill 2 on our Geto, kind of minimize the amount of damage that we're going to take here. Use skill 3 on our Gojo. The more times he attacks Gojo, the better for us, right? Because then that means less disruptions, and on top of that, we're going to have less of a chance of our characters dying. So we'll do the same stuff again. This is going to be turn 2. Nice. And then we'll skill 3 here. Skill 2 again, and then skill 3. And then obviously the next turn we'll be able to ult with our Gojo. Now we're gonna pray that he decides to attack Gojo with all the attacks. He did not. But luckily we already got Gakuganji's kind of like overall use out of all of this, right? He already got like 3 debuffs. You know, going for 4 definitely would have been a lot better for us, but honestly, it's better that he died out of all the characters that we had here. So now we're going to use this memory here. We're going to buff Then we're going to use this memory here, Kamo's archery lesson, and then we're going to debuff again just to maintain the debuffs on the enemy. And then we're going to pride and then use the ult of Gojo and then just kind of like nuke the boss, right? Yeah, what is that, like 13 million or whatever? Yeah, I mean, whatever, bro. Just fucking destroy it. Anyway, let's move on to the Nuke team. As you can see, the debuffing capabilities from obviously all these characters, you know, and the buffing and all that, especially from Geto, because Geto increases a lot. Like, you debuff him a lot, like 150% is just crazy on top of everything else that we're going to be getting there. So yeah, we did 13 million. Obviously, I think it was also a crit too, to keep that in mind. Let's move on to the Nuke Showcase. All right, so we're here at I believe this is EX2, right? We have this complete optimal setup to do the most amount of damage possible. So right here we do have the debuffs on the enemy, which of course is going to be 99% here, another 99%. That's going to be the 2 debuffs from Megami. Obviously we're going to, you know, pile in another, you know, debuff from his skill 1. Then Momo obviously is going to be applying her skill 2 here. So we should have already have 1 buff active, I'm pretty sure, from Momo right here. So we're going to be able to get another one right here again when we use our skill 2. That's going to be the second one on him. Then our Yaga has already buffed previously 3 times, right? So we have 1 here, 2 here, and 3 here. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to get the 4th one just because we don't have enough cursed energy to use skill 2 again, but that's okay because we're gonna be using perfect sync and the ultimate to apply another debuff to the enemy, right? So they're gonna be able to take more damage. And then obviously with Geto, we've already debuffed the enemy 2 times with his skill 2, right? So I believe it's 45%. It's the 45. No, it's this one right here. Right. So we already applied 2 of those. So 50%, 50%. So we got the max amount of debuff that we can get on him. Not counting obviously the 3rd stack of it because we are going to be nuking with him. So obviously we can't get that 3rd stack. So this is going to be the optimal setup. I just decided to kind of skip all the bullshit, the earlier stuff, so that way you don't have to watch through me going through the 3 waves and the enemies in this stage and all that good stuff. We are on the final stage, the final wave with the final turn, and this is basically going to be the optimal outcome with, of course, all the buffs active between Momo and Yaga, and then of course the debuffs from Megami, Yaga, and obviously JJK Geto. So let's see how much damage we managed to do here with his ult. And then obviously keep in mind the boss is weak to blue, and then obviously we did use the memory there to obviously increase our blue damage dealt. Unfortunately we didn't get the break, which would have been nice if we did, but that's fine. And then we did 5.6 mil roughly, right? So definitely a great sub DPS character while also being able to provide the utility. Obviously in this scenario we used him as our main carry and he was able to properly do that as well. I wouldn't say he's one of the hardest hitters, but I'd say you definitely are going to be wanting to use him alongside Gojo anyways, so there's no reason not to. And you can see that good damage that he did there is very nice extra damage to have alongside, you know, your Gojo who's going to be doing all the damage, or your Sukuna or your Inumaki or whoever it may be. And yeah, I mean obviously we're using him for his utility, but it's nice that he can do some pretty good damage overall too. But yeah, anyways, without further ado, that's going to be the end and concluding our JJK Geto showcase. I love this character. He's one of my favorite characters in the game since the beginning of the game, even though he was fucking dog shit and you would only really use him as a debuffer and nothing else. And he wasn't even like the best debuffer, but he was definitely a pretty decent one, right? It's just you were kind of limited on the things you would use him on. But now you definitely use him on Mono Blue easily, no problem. Obviously alongside Inumaki if you'd like, things like that. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about his recent buff. Remember before he couldn't even hit like 5 mil. He could barely hit, let alone the 1 million. So definitely got a huge major buff. Definitely makes him more viable in terms of doing damage. And of course, being a debuffer, he's even better than he was previously. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace.